Will members kindly take their seats? Will the House please come to order? Good afternoon. The devotional today will be led by Jason Lorber of Burlington, who is a comedian, a leadership coach, and a former House member.
Can I get a good afternoon? Good afternoon. I love asking questions. In fact, I ask too many questions, and I know this because in my first term serving here, I was pulled aside by the chair of House Appropriations, who at the time was Martha Heath. And you listen when Martha Heath has something to say. And she pulled me aside and she said, "Jason, you need to not ask so many questions." Actually, she said, "Jason, stop asking so many questions." And I said, "Do I ask a lot of questions?" Okay, you think that's funny. But she just looked at me and she said, if you have something to say, just say it. And then she turned to leave, and I had another question, but I didn't ask her because I'd asked all the questions. But then I had to figure it out for myself. So that was lesson number one. The thing about how do you know if you're asking too many questions, I figured out there's 4 ways to know. One is Martha Heath tells you. The second is you already know the answer. The third is you're speaking for longer than most people make a statement. And the fourth is that your question starts with, "Have you thought about," or "Don't you think?" And then there's, the fabulous question of, "So, are you really going to wear that?" Which is not a question. It's it's a judgment and fashion advice wrapped in passive-aggressive question marks. But that does not make it a question. And I see this everywhere. I see people asking questions when they really have statements. And I see this in my work, whether it's with business executives or at a nonprofit retreat or just over lunch with friends. And why do we do? The reason why we do this is often because of fear, that we don't want to be shot down. And so we think it's easier to say something as a question like, "You have these 2 programs, have you thought about merging them?" And the person can respond, "That's a stupid idea." And you say, "It was only a question." It's like, was it? It wasn't a question. It was a statement. And so we have the opportunity to move forward, because when we don't ask the question, what we're doing is we're undermining the ability for us to be heard and for our ideas to be valued. There's another reason why we often ask questions rather than make statements. And that's because we don't realize ourselves that we're making a statement. And this can come up like if there's a bill in front of you and you might have the question you want to ask, have you considered a funding source for this? Which is obviously, you already know the answer because it wasn't in the bill. If there's no funding in the bill, they have already either, they haven't considered it. So instead of that, you can say, "I love this program, but I'm concerned that there's no funding source and I can't support it as is." And then you can go the next step and say, "And here's a funding source." Or, "I'd like to change the program so that the administrators of the program can collect fees and it can be self-funding." But the idea that a lot of us don't put those ideas forward is because we're worried that it's not going to be perfect enough. But you're here in the legislature, and the legislature is a deliberative body. It's very deliberative. And you come up with an idea, and it's going to be modified, it's going to be changed, it's going to be amended, and then it'll be passed and moved to the Senate. Well, they'll screw it up, and then you'll fix it. That's the process. And so when you're thinking about, should I ask a question, you may already have the answer. So dig deep, think about how you can add value and move the conversation forward. How's that? Thank you.
Members, we have a joint House resolution to take up at this time. JRH 11 is a joint resolution strongly urging Congress to enact HR 5356, the National Infrastructure Bank Act of 2025, introduced by Representative Cole of Hartford and others. Please listen to the reading of the resolution by title only.
JRH 11, joint resolution strongly urging Congress to enact HR 5356, the National Infrastructure Bank Act of 2025.
Now, this resolution has been read for the first time and the same is treated as a bill and referred to the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. We now have a joint Senate resolution to take up at this time. JRS 51 is a joint resolution relating to weekend adjournment on May 1st, 2026. It was offered by Senator Baruth and was read and adopted on the part of the Senate. Please listen to the reading of the resolution.
JRS 51, joint resolution relating to weekend adjournment on May 1st, 2026. Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that when the two houses adjourn on Friday, May 1st, 2026, it be to meet again no later than Tuesday, May 5th, 2026.
Now you've heard the reading of the resolution, and the question is, shall the House adopt the resolution in concurrence? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and the resolution is adopted in concurrence. Members, we have received a request to read a House concurrent resolution that the House and Senate adopted pursuant to the consent calendar. HCR 261 is a House concurrent resolution recognizing May 2026 as Older Americans Month and designating May 6, 2026 as Age Strong Vermont Day. Please listen to the reading of the resolution.
Whereas the life experience, knowledge, and contributions of older Vermonters are invaluable societal assets, making Vermont a state with considerable historical knowledge and professional experience. And whereas May is celebrated nationally every year as Older Americans Month, a time to recognize older adults' invaluable contributions, to highlight aging trends, and to reaffirm Vermont's commitment to serving older adults. And whereas, according to the U.S. Census's American Community Survey, as of 2024, 22.8% of Vermont's population is 65 years of age or older. And whereas this demographic reality presents opportunities to capitalize on diverse experiences, expertise, and skills of older Vermonters. And whereas since the enactment of the Older Vermonters Act, 2020 Acts and Resolves number 156, state government, the nonprofit sector, and the private sector have partnered to establish Age Strong Vermont, Vermont's first multi-sector plan on aging, which was released in January 2024. And whereas Age Strong Vermont focuses on the state's changing age demographics through an examination of affordable aging, healthy aging for all, social connection, infrastructure for the future, including housing, transportation, and community design, elder justice, family caregiver support, and strengthening overall systems of support. And whereas the Departments of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living and of Health are jointly overseeing an Age Strong Vermont implementation process that is now in its third year, and then involves other state offices, local communities, and other organizations, including the General Assembly. And whereas the designation of a specific day during Older Americans Month to celebrate Age Strong Vermont initiative will serve to emphasize the project's societal importance. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that the General Assembly recognizes May 2026 as Older Americans Month and designates May 6, 2026 as Age Strong Day, Vermont Day. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of State be directed to send a copy of this resolution to the Commissioner of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living, and to the Commissioner of Health.
Are there any announcements? Member from Wolcott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We just heard a resolution recognizing May as Older Americans Month and marking the 3rd anniversary of Age Strong Vermont, our long-term multi-sector plan on aging. We all know that nearly 1 in 4 Vermonters is over 65. What a tremendous asset. These are our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues, people with a deep knowledge of our state, its land, its communities, and its history. These are our mentors, business owners, farmers, volunteers, artists, and caregivers. Vermont is a richer place for having so many of us. I think we can all agree that growing old is the goal, right? Age Strong Vermont reflects that spirit. Now entering its 3rd year, it's a genuine partnership across state government, nonprofits, local communities, and the private sector. It's a plan to build around capitalizing on what older Vermonters bring, making sure Vermont remains a place where people can keep contributing, stay connected, and live fully at every age. Housing, transportation, community design, family caregiver support, elder justice. These are investments in people who have already invested enormously in our state, and we have the most experienced workforce in the country. That's not a challenge to manage, it's a strength we can all build on. Older Americans Month has been observed nationally since 1963. Age Strong puts our own stamp on it, not merely acknowledging that our population is aging, but celebrating what that means for who we are as a state and recognize the upcoming Age Strong Vermont Day that gives this work the public recognition it deserves. Please join me in welcoming the people who do this work every day. They join us from the Department of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living and the Department of Health. They are nonprofit leaders and community partners who are making Age Strong Vermont a reality. They are seated in the balcony.
The guest, the member from Wolcott, please rise and be recognized. Member from Burlington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I know you all heard the devotional that my good friend Jason Lorber presented this morning. So I got to meet Jason when he was a state rep, and I was the director of a nonprofit, and would come and advocate. And Jason was fantastic about teaching me and the staff some more advocacy skills. We had a joint passion for criminal justice reform, prison reform, and children's issues. Jason also, so he served in the State House, for those of you that don't know Jason yet, from 2005 to 2013. Just when I started serving in the legislature. And when I was thinking about running, and after I got elected, Jason was an amazing mentor and gave me a lot of advice, although I don't remember him telling me not to talk a lot, which I know people here wish you had. Jason, though, he has an MBA from Stanford, and he has a great consulting business that he started and is the president of, and he generously donated his consulting / stand-up comedy talents to our staff retreat many years ago. And it was the staff retreat, the purpose was to help our staff kind of recharge. And Jason certainly made a lot of people laugh. I ended up being the subject of some of his humor, so I wasn't laughing quite as much as everyone else. But it's really great to have Jason here today, and I hope everyone will welcome him back to the State House.
Will the former member please rise and be recognized? Member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, I'd just like to take a minute to welcome some advocates to the State House who've come here to talk about their experience with the power of psychedelic medicine from natural sources. So please welcome our guests from Cabot, Johnson, and originally Waterbury, Joe Mangan, Rory Van Tynen, and Katie Bork.
Will the guest and the member from Burlington please rise and be recognized? Member from Pownell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today marks the conclusion of the legislative internship of UVM senior Connor Cahill, double major in environmental studies and political science. For nearly a quarter of a year, he has borne my infirmities, and I have rejoiced in his helpfulness and his good nature. Madam Speaker, may I quote from a letter from Mr. Cahill?
You may.
Following the development of legislation such as Act 181 reform has been fascinating and has deepened my interest in land use policy. That is the whole point of the game. I ask that I bid him farewell while we bid him welcome.
Will the guest and the member from Pownell please rise and be recognized? Member from Brattleboro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Tomorrow, we will have our second annual Art Social in the cafeteria. Those of you who came last year, there were many, had a wonderful time, produced some fabulous collages, and there are no art skills necessary. You'll be cutting and pasting to your heart's delight with some beautiful papers, or just come in and relax and talk to other people. So I hope you'll come. I sent out an invitation earlier today and hope to see you there. Thank you.
Are there any further announcements? Member from Barrytown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That most sacred of season is upon us, and that season is fishing season. Joining us in the balcony today, we have Genevieve Sickles and Matt Cannon, who are both students at Spalding High School and are representing the Trout in the Classroom program, sponsored in part by the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department. They are also joined by Dylan Sickles, Fish Culture Operations Manager with the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department. And the body has for years of discussion about the high value of our fisheries programs. So I'd like to recognize the collaborative effort and recognize these guests. They are also in the card room today, and they look forward to providing you with insight into the work and value of the fish culture program here in Vermont. And I hope the body will join me in welcoming them.
Will the guest and the member from Barrytown please rise and be recognized? Member from Moortown.
Madam Speaker, I also have a special intern joining us in the chamber today. Charlotte Mays grew up in Warren, Vermont, and became a page here in 2017. Her enthusiasm for what we do in the State House has just grown over the years. She's now at UVM, majoring in political science and public policy with a minor in Middle Eastern studies, and is excited to pursue a career in policy and public service. Please help me welcome Charlotte Mays. She's seated in the gallery.
Will the guest and the member from Moortown please rise and be recognized? Are there any further announcements? Member from Waitsfield.
Madam Speaker, I am pleased to welcome my daughter Posey to the People's House today. The last time Posey was here was about 20 years ago, when she and her elementary school class were invited by the Secretary of State for recognition of their artwork in the Fish and Wildlife Fish Art Contest. Posey had created a beautiful painting of the Vermont brook trout, and after then, Secretary of State Deb Markowitz gave Posey an honorable mention for her brook trout painting. An enormous cake was presented to the students in the cafeteria. To our delight, this beautiful sheet cake was decorated with a full-size rendering of Posey's brook trout. It was a very proud parenting moment. Posey went on to study environmental science at Mount Holyoke College and began a career in the environmental field, working for Sea Semester, Eco AmeriCorps, and she's currently serving Burlington City Parks and Rec. She has not strayed far from her early fascination with the natural world. I applaud programs like the Fish and Wildlife Fish Art Program for introducing Vermont students to our natural environment. And I was delighted to see Fish and Wildlife's display in the card room today, sharing, among other things, their elementary school program on the Vermont brook trout. It made me feel that today is somehow the perfect day for Posey to return to the State House. So, Madam Speaker, would you please help me welcome Posey? She is seated in the gallery.
Will the family of the member from Waitsfield please rise and be recognized? Are there any further announcements? Member from Winooski.
Madam Speaker, I just want to provide a reminder that May 16th is the annual NAMI Walk, which is an annual fundraising event for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And the Vermont chapter has an especially fun walk. This year we're expanding to Centennial Field, home of the Lake Monsters. There are going to be about 40 vendors, food trucks, and if folks are interested in joining the walk, it's free. Or if you'd like to make a donation, I will be sending out more information, but mark your calendars, May 16th at 10 a.m. at Centennial Field.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none. Orders of the day. Members, I have an update on the calendar order. We are going to start with Senate Bill 230, which is an act relating to fair employment practices. That's S230. We're going to take that up first, and then we will then go in the order of the calendar, S179, S173, and down. So with that, we'll start with Senate Bill 230, which is an act relating to fair employment practices. The bill was referred to the Committee on General and Housing, which recommends that the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as printed in today's calendar. The member from Fairfax, Representative Bartley, will speak for the committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S230, an act relating to fair employment practices.
Member from Fairfax.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If this bill feels familiar as I walk through it today, that is intentional. S230, an act relating to fair employment practices, is an omnibus labor bill that brings together several measures that the body has already considered, along with technical corrections to existing Vermont law. Because much of this language has already been debated and passed by the House in other forms, I will move efficiently through the early sections and then spend a bulk of my time on the new provision before us in Section 3B. Section 1 makes an important clarification to Vermont's Parental and Family Leave Act as it applies to full-time teachers. As we know, teachers often perform significant portions of their work outside the classroom, grading, lesson planning, communicating with families, much of which happens outside of traditional trackable hours. This section aligns Vermont law with federal regulations by making clear that when determining whether a teacher has met 1,250-hour threshold for leave eligibility, the burden is on the employer to demonstrate the threshold has not been met. It is a clarification, but an important one, ensuring that teachers are treated fairly and consistently under the law. Section 2 builds on work this body has already done to support victims and survivors, and this language has been passed out as H887 on March 19th of this legislative session. Last session, Vermont established safe leave, allowing individuals experiencing domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking to take unpaid leave to seek medical care, counseling, legal assistance, or safety planning. This section strengthens the framework by adding those survivors to the definition of crime victim under the Fair Employment Practice Act, also known as FEPA. In doing so, it extends protections against discrimination and harassment in the workplace. It also aligns documentation requirements across statutes and creates consistency in how these protections are applied. Section 3 is straightforward and is the same language passed on January 28th of this year in H 532. Current Vermont statute still contains language suggesting that colleges and universities may require tenured faculty to retire at age 70. That provision has been unenforceable under federal law since 1994, a year after I was born, when the applicable exemption expired. This section simply removes outdated and invalid language from our statutes to reflect current law. Section 3 clarifies that elected and appointed municipal officers are not considered employees for purposes of Vermont's minimum wage and overtime law. The body last saw this language and passed it out on March 18th in H 556. This aligns statute with both current practice and federal standards under the Fair Labor Standards Act. Again, this is not a policy shift, but just a clarification. Madam Speaker, Section 3B is where I would like to spend the majority of my time, as it represents the primary new policy before the body. This subsection of S230 was a part of a much larger effort passed out of your House Commerce and Economic Development Committee. However, I think we all recall that H205 was met with some concerns and hesitation and was ultimately recommitted on March 13th of this year. The language in S230 is a simplified approach to non-compete agreements where all parties ended in support. As a reminder, a non-compete agreement is a contract that restricts a worker from taking a job with a competitor or starting a competing business after leaving employment. These agreements have been used across a wide variety of industries, and depending on how they are constructed, may significantly limit a worker's ability to move within the labor market. The approach in this bill is a targeted one. It focuses on two different groups: non-exempt employees and healthcare providers. Subsection A prohibits non-compete agreements for non-exempt employees unless those agreements are negotiated as part of a collective bargaining agreement. Non-exempt employees are typically hourly workers, individuals who are eligible for overtime, who are generally directly supervised, and whose roles do not require advanced degrees. The intent here is to ensure that workers in these positions are not restricted from seeking new employment opportunities or improving their economic circumstances through overly restrictive contractual provisions. Subsection B addresses non-compete provisions in contracts with healthcare providers. This section voids certain types of restrictive clauses, including geographic or time-based restrictions on providing care, limitations on a provider's ability to notify patients of a change in employment, non-disparagement clauses, provisions inconsistent with Vermont law, and requirements that disputes be litigated outside of Vermont. Importantly, this section also clarifies that information a provider may share with patients when they separate from a practice. This helps ensure continuity of care and transparency for those patients. At the same time, it draws a clear boundary by stating that these restrictions do not apply to contracts for non-clinical business support services. Subsection C includes an anti-retaliation protections and applies existing remedies under the Fair Employment Practices Act. Subsection D makes clear that these provisions apply prospectively only to agreements entered into on or after July 1st of 2026. Existing agreements will not be impacted. Section 4 is the effective date of the bill, which is July 1st of 2026. Madam Speaker, the Committee on General and Housing heard extensive testimony on this legislation from a broad range of stakeholders. If you would like to review the long list of witnesses, I have several copies on my desk here. And after consideration on a unanimous vote of 11-0-0, the committee found S-230 favorable with amendment, and we respectfully ask the body for your support.
So the question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on General and Housing? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have proposed to the Senate to amend the bill. Now, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Now we'll take up Senate Bill 179, which is an act relating to the Uniform Disclaimer of Property Interest Act. The bill was referred to the Committee on Judiciary, which recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence. The member from Brattleboro, Representative Goodnow, will speak for the committee. And affecting the revenue of the state, the bill was referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, which also recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence. The member from Woodstock, Representative Kimball, will speak for that committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S-179, an act relating to the Uniform Disclaimer of Property Interests Act.
Member from Brattleboro.
Madam Speaker, S-179 would update the Uniform Disclaimer of Property Interests Act for Vermont. To begin, I'd like to explain what a disclaimer of property interest is, walk us through the history of how we got to where we are now, and then look at the biggest changes this bill would create. A disclaimer is a formal refusal to accept a transfer of property. Any person who would inherit property in a probate proceeding or as a beneficiary listed on an account has the right to disclaim that interest. That individual is known as a disclaimant. There are many reasons one would wish to disclaim, but often a disclaimer is used to avoid incurring a tax liability or other financial obligation, but it can also be used to redirect property to another person or entity who might benefit more from it. Vermont passed the 1978 version of the Uniform Disclaimer of Property Interests Act, which I will moving forward refer to as the Uniform Disclaimer Act, in 1986. That version was drafted by the Uniform Laws Commission in 1978 in the aftermath of the Tax Reform Act of 1976. The Uniform Laws Commission was established in 1892 and provides states with nonpartisan, carefully conceived uniform laws for consideration. In the Tax Reform Act of 1976, Congress passed a law that if a disclaimer is not to be treated as a gift, then it must have the following. It had to be made within 9 months after the interest was created. It had to be in writing. The writing had to be delivered to the person you would normally transfer the interest to. And the disclaimant could not take any interest in the property before the disclaimer. Further, at that time, Congress unified the gift and estate tax systems so that the rates were the same and created one basic exclusion for gifts and inheritances. The estate tax return is due 9 months from death. Congress did not want disclaimers being exercised beyond the date the estate tax return was required to be filed. They wanted the heirs to disclaim before the estate tax return was due, and thus the 9-month deadline for disclaimers. I'm glad I could clarify that. The Uniform Disclaimer Act that Vermont passed in 1986 imposed a 9-month deadline on all disclaimers, whether you cared about the gift tax consequences or not. It usurped the common law of disclaimers. 40 years have now passed since its first enactment, and it is time to update the Uniform Disclaimer Act. In the interim 40 years, the Uniform Laws Commission has updated the Uniform Disclaimer Act to take care of issues that have inevitably come up over time as changes have been made to the federal tax law. The Probate and Trust Law section of the Vermont Bar Association set up a committee to review the latest version of the Uniform Disclaimer Act and recommends its passage as proposed by the Senate because, in part, the federal gift tax environment has drastically changed since its first enactment. In 1976, the gift and estate tax exclusion was $120,000 per person. It is now $15 million per person. Most people do not care whether their disclaimer will result in a federal taxable gift because they will never use up their $15 million exclusion in their lifetime, and thus there is no need for a 9-month deadline for disclaimer. This act would do away with the 9-month deadline, which would give Vermonters more time to decide whether to disclaim or not. Sometimes there are inadvertent delays in which the 9-month deadline would pass and prevent someone from disclaiming. Looking to the bill itself, Madam Speaker, in addition to doing away with the 9-month deadline, which is the meat of the bill, the act would also make a number of important improvements to the disclaimer law, which I'll walk the body through the highlights of. First, it will make clear rules on disclaiming when a person holds property jointly with another person and the other person dies and the property passes to the survivor. That can be found in section 4107 of the bill. It will allow for someone to disclaim ahead of time so individuals do not have to wait until a person dies to disclaim. If you know you're going to inherit property in the future, you can take care of disclaiming it now. That is in section 4106B1. With these proposed changes, trustees can now disclaim taking in property to a trust. Currently, there's no equivalent power in statute, and being able to disclaim inherited property can be an important role for a trustee of a trust. This is in section 4108 of the chapter. The bill creates a power for parents to disclaim for their minor children when the minor child is an inheritor of property. Critically, though, only if there is no conflict of interest between the parent and the child. This is in section 4105C of the chapter, and there's a minor technical amendment to this section, which I'll speak on later. The bill allows an infirm person to have another person sign for him or her to disclaim property. That's in 4105D2 of the bill. The bill specifically addresses disclaiming part of a property, but not all of the inherited property, and that's in section 4105E. The bill provides clear guidance for situations where the disclaimant is an entity like a museum or a university. That's in 4106B3A of the bill. If the disclaimer results in the property going to the legatee's estate, the bill allows for the property to go to the persons named in the estate without going through the probate administration, saving both time and expense for the individuals. That's in 4106B3D of the bill. The bill provides clearer rules on delivering the disclaimer to transferors. The current statute only deals with real estate. This act would deal with other types of property, making it much clearer how to properly execute a disclaimer of other types of property. That's in 4112 of the bill. And finally, the bill makes clear that when a person disclaims, it is not a transfer. That is important if the disclaiming property interest is real estate, so it will not incur a transfer tax. That's in 4105G of the bill. Madam Speaker, the baby boomer generation was born between 1946 and 1964. The oldest baby boomers are turning 80 years old. We are about to experience a period of one of the greatest transfers of wealth from one generation to the next in our country's history. Our current uniform disclaimer law has not kept up with the times. We need this updated uniform law to keep up with the changing landscape and to meet the challenges of this unprecedented wealth transfer for Vermonters. Madam Speaker, we heard from the following witnesses: Legislative Counsel from the Office of Legislative Counsel, an attorney from the Vermont Bar Association, an attorney from the Vermont Bar Association Probate and Trust Law section, and the executive director from the Vermont Bar Association. All of those witnesses spoke in favor of this bill. The bill was reported favorably out of your House Judiciary Committee on a vote of 8-0-3, and the committee respectfully asks the House to join us in supporting its passage.
And now speaking for the Committee on Ways and Means, member from Woodstock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The bill was referred to the Committee on Ways and Means because it had a potential impact in the treatment of estates, affecting the revenue of the state, and because it had one particular section entitled Tax Qualified Disclaimers. We heard from the Office of Legislative Counsel and also from the Joint Fiscal Office that the bill has no financial impact on the state whatsoever, and we took a vote of 10-0-1 and in approval and asked for your approval. Thank you.
And now the member from Brattleboro offers a proposal of amendment that is printed in today's calendar. Member from Brattleboro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This minor amendment can be found on page 2075 of today's calendar. The proposed amendment would add the word child after the word minor in section 4105C of the bill. I spoke to this earlier. The reason for this minor amendment is that throughout the rest of the act, when we're talking about children, we say minor child. And in this one section, we omitted the word child, and so it was not consistent for the rest of the act. So we add child in to make it consistent throughout. Your House Judiciary Committee took a straw poll of 11-0-0 in favor. Thank you.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as offered by the member from Brattleboro? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have proposed to the Senate to amend the bill. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Next is Senate Bill 173, which is an act relating to vocational rehabilitation. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
S-173, an act relating to vocational rehabilitation.
The question is, shall the bill pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill in concurrence with proposal of amendment. Next, we'll take up Senate Bill 142, which is an act relating to pathway to licensure for internationally trained physicians and medical graduates. The bill was referred to the Committee on Healthcare, which recommends that the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as printed in today's calendar. The member from Mendon, Representative Taylor, will speak for the committee. And affecting the revenue of the state, the bill was referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, which recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence with the proposal of amendment recommended by the Committee on Healthcare. Member from Georgia, Representative Brannigan, will speak for that committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S-142, an act relating to a pathway to licensure for internationally trained physicians and medical graduates.
Member from Mendon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will be presenting S-142, a strike all amendment. S-142, an act relating to a pathway to licensure for internationally trained physicians, was referred to the House Healthcare Committee from the Senate, and I respectfully report that it has considered the same and recommend that the House propose to the Senate that the bill be amended. You can find this bill on page 2075 of today's journal. Vermont has a greater need for physicians now more than ever. Our state's demographics clearly show an increase in an aging population that require medical care on many levels. Healthcare costs are unaffordable. We need more Vermonters using primary care as a preventative measure and less seeking medical attention from hospitals when an acute care is needed. This is a more expensive alternative for the state. As we find ways to help address these cost issues, it is clear we need more primary care physicians to increase accessibility to our communities. This bill creates a pathway for internationally trained physicians who already live in Vermont to practice in our state, increasing availability in our primary care system for all Vermonters and helping stabilize the rising costs of healthcare. Currently, there is no other choice for internationally trained physicians to obtain licensure other than starting over from residency. S-142 creates an alternative pathway for these internationally trained physicians to obtain their license to practice here in Vermont and strengthen the workforce in Vermont. Many other states are also doing this, and this language is built on the work that other states have already done. As we know, life is full of challenges, unforeseen tragedies arise, and we seek alternative ways to stay on the path we are destined to fulfill. This may mean moving somewhere unexpected, leading to language barriers, cultural differences, and feelings of hopelessness. Many talented physicians around the world complete years of education, training, and practice only to face war, displacement, family hardship, or economic challenges that bring them to a new country. They arrive in the United States with skill, experience, and a calling to heal, but encounter barriers of licensing systems, cost, and bureaucracy that can make contributing to their new communities feel impossible. S-142 recognizes two situations at once: Vermont's need for physicians and the untapped talent already here in Vermont. It creates a responsible pathway to licensure for internationally trained physicians to contribute their expertise, serve Vermonters, and become fully licensed under the same high-quality standards as all our physicians, while expanding access to care to those who need it. I'll now walk you through a section-by-section summary. Section 1 is the findings and purpose of the bill. It directs the Department of Health, in collaboration with the Board of Medical Practice, to report to the General Assembly by January 15, 2027, on a pathway to licensure for internationally trained physicians, including the following: a summary of other states' processes for licensing internationally trained physicians and data on their outcomes, a description of external sources needed to evaluate the education experience and examinations of internationally trained physicians and the availability of the resources, a proposal for licensing internationally trained physicians in Vermont, including qualification and supervision requirements, recency of practice requirements, resources and statutory authority needed, and an implementation plan and timeline, and any other information the department deems relevant. Section 2 amends 26 VSA subsection 1391, which are the qualifications for medical licensure. This section, which takes effect on July 1st, 2028, amends the statute establishing qualifications for medical licensure to allow the Board of Medical Practice to issue provisional licenses to internationally trained physicians to practice medicine at a participating healthcare facility, as well as full licenses to internationally trained physicians who complete the pathway to licensure that the board will establish by rule. Section 3 adds 26 VSA subsection 1396, pathway to licensure for internationally trained physicians rulemaking. This section, which takes effect on July 1st, 2027, directs the Board of Medical Practice to adopt rules to enable the licensure of internationally trained physicians, including qualifications for a provisional license to a practice at a participating healthcare facility, standards for participating healthcare facilities to use to evaluate the holder of a provisional license, and additional qualifications needed for an internationally trained physician to get a full license following successful completion of the provisional licensure period. Section 4, 26 VSA subsection 1397, participating healthcare facilities. This section establishes the requirements for a hospital, federally qualified health center, FQHC, or community health center to serve as a participating healthcare facility, to provide medical mentoring, evaluation, assessment, and support to an internationally trained physician holding a provisional license, including ensuring that the supervision is provided by a fully licensed Vermont physicians who are physically located in Vermont. Ensuring that the provisionally licensed physician only provides services to patients who are physically located in Vermont. And carrying medical malpractice insurance that covers the provisionally licensed physicians as long as the provisionally licensed physician is working at the facility. Section 5 are the effective dates. Section 1, Pathway to Licensure Report. This section takes effect upon passage. Section 3, Rulemaking for Pathway to Licensure takes effect on July 1st, 2027. Section 2, Qualifications for Medical Licensure, and 4, Participating Healthcare Facilities take effect on July 1st, 2028. Costs of care in Vermont are the highest in the nation. That is in part due to constricting access and a shrinking workforce. Many Vermonters cannot find a primary care doctor, which means preventative care is being delayed and chronic diseases unattended. Expanding our workforce by streamlining a path to licensure for internationally trained physicians can reduce wait times, travel times and costs, and reduce the reliance on costly emergency room care. We heard testimony from Executive Director of Vermont Medical Society, Bill Reporter from the Senate Committee on Health and Welfare, Deputy Chief Counsel from the Office of Legislative Counsel, President and CEO of Gifford Healthcare, Senior Vice President of Policy and Strategy, Vermont Association of Hospitals and Health Systems, the Chair of Vermont Board of Medical Practice, General Counsel, Department of Health, the Associate Chief Medical Officer of UVM Health, the Chair of the Health Justice Committee, and the Senior Policy Consultant, Office of New American State Network. The committee voted in support of the bill as amended on a vote of 11-0-0 and asked the body to vote yes.
And now speaking for the Committee on Ways and Means, member from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The committee appreciates the fine report just delivered by the member from Mendon. The Ways and Means Committee recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence with the amendment recommended by the Healthcare Committee. There is no fiscal impact of this amendment or in any part of the bill. So that was approved by the Ways and Means Committee 10-0-1, and we look for your approval.
So the question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Health Care? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have proposed to the Senate to amend the bill. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Now we'll turn to Senate Bill 227, which is an act relating to creating immigration protocols in Vermont schools. The bill was referred to the Committee on Education, which recommends that the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as printed in today's calendar. The member from Williston, Representative Brady, will speak for the committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S227, an act relating to creating immigration protocols in Vermont schools.
Member from Williston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. S227 is a school safety bill that largely reflects the guidance that our Agency of Education has been providing to Vermont schools since January of 2025. And it came over from the Senate with overwhelming support. May I quote from Agency of Education written testimony on April 6th?
You may.
There are children in Vermont and across the United States who are scared to leave their homes and go to school. In an environment of fear and distrust caused by actions by the federal government, including violence against American citizens and members of immigrant communities at the hands of federal agents, the Agency of Education recognizes the importance of communicating directly with Vermonters. This includes educating Vermonters about their constitutional rights and includes letting Vermonters know that their state education agency stands with communities across the state in ensuring that our schools are free from discrimination and that we give every child the opportunity to fulfill their potential. Public schools may not deny access to students based on immigration status. The U.S. Supreme Court held in 1982 that all students, including undocumented students, have a right to attend public schools. Vermont state law also enshrines the rights of all Vermont students, regardless of immigration status, to educational opportunities that are substantially equal. Every child and family deserves access to an education free from fear and intimidation, regardless of immigration status. And this bill ensures that schools do not collect or share immigration status information, provides families with trusted resources, and requires a judicial warrant before law enforcement enters non-public areas of a school on immigration matters. These protections are intended to keep schools safe and allow schools and students and teachers to focus on learning. The changes from your House Education Committee are largely a restructuring of the bill to reflect the typical process of development and implementation of school policies and procedures. I will now walk through the bill. Section 1 is the purpose statement. The purpose of this act is to secure the right of every child to equal access to a free public education and to a school that's safe from intimidation and fear, regardless of immigration status. In order to ensure the right to educational equality, schools must take steps to protect the integrity of school learning environments for all children, so that no parent is discouraged from sending a child to, and no child is discouraged from attending school, including due to the threat of immigration enforcement on a school campus. Section 2 amends Title 16, Chapter 33, the school safety chapter of our education law. Subsection A includes definitions. Law enforcement in this bill includes state and federal law enforcement, but excludes school safety and resource officers. Non-public area of a school is part of the school that normally requires authorization to enter, and a school in this bill is a public or independent school approved under Section 166 of Title 16. Next, the bill sets forth immigration protocols required of schools. Subsection B speaks to immigration resources and support. Superintendents and heads of school must distribute an immigration resource guide to students and staff that is developed by the Attorney General. Those administrators must also designate one individual at each school who will serve as a resource for immigration-related matters. And finally, superintendents and heads of school will be required to provide students with immigration-related concerns, including connecting them with an immigration advocacy institution to the extent practicable. The Attorney General, in consultation with the Agency of Education, will develop the Immigration Resource Guide referenced earlier that will inform students and families about immigration and civil rights-related resources. The Attorney General will review the guide once annually and provide the guide to the Agency of Education so that it can be distributed to school administrators. Subsection C is student information privacy. Schools are prohibited from collecting or requesting the citizenship or immigration status of students or their family members unless required by law. Schools also cannot designate a student's immigration status, citizenship, place of birth, nationality, or national origin in a database that the school maintains or as directory information, nor can students voluntarily share sensitive information about a student with a third party. Subsection D, law enforcement on site and request for information. If law enforcement appears at a school site on an immigration-related matter, a superintendent or head of school or their designee shall not allow the officer into a non-public area of a school until the officer presents a judicial warrant naming a specific person at the school that is subject to search or arrest. A school also cannot reveal any information about a student or staff member to law enforcement on an immigration-related matter without a judicial warrant. Subsection E, immigration agreements. No school, school district, or supervisory union can enter into an agreement with any government, state, local, or federal, that furthers enforcement of any immigration law unless otherwise required by law. Any such proposed agreement must be reviewed by the superintendent or head of school in consultation with the Attorney General's office. Subsection F, the applicability. The bill next clarifies that nothing in the section is intended to prohibit or impede any public agency from complying with two federal laws that require information sharing with the U.S. government. In subsection G, policy, the Agency of Education must develop a model policy on or before January 1st of 2027 to help schools implement the sections in this bill related to student privacy and law enforcement access. The Agency of Education must also include recommended procedures for schools to carry out the policy. Beginning in the 2027-28 school year, each school board and independent school must adopt such policy, and if a school doesn't adopt its own policy meeting the bill's requirements, it will have been deemed to have adopted the model policy. Section 3, finally, Immigration Resource Guide, requires the Attorney General to develop the Immigration Resource Guide referenced earlier on or before August 1st of 2026, and the bill would take effect on passage. Your Committee on Education heard from the Director of Policy and Communications at the Agency of Education, the Superintendent from Winooski School District, a student from Colchester High School, the bill's sponsors in the Senate, the Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs at the Vermont School Boards Association, the President of the Vermont Superintendents Association, the Executive Director of the Vermont Superintendents Association, the Senior Executive Director of the Vermont Principals Association, the Safe and Healthy Schools Director at the Agency of Education, Legislative Counsel, General Counsel for the Agency of Education, and the Director of the Civil Rights Unit at the Office of the Attorney General. The bill passed your House Education Committee on a vote of 11-0, and we ask for the body's support.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Education? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have proposed to the Senate to amend the bill. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Next, we'll take up Senate Bill 298, which is an act relating to creating the Vermont Voting Rights Act. The bill was referred to the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs, which recommends that the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as printed in today's calendar. The member from Charlotte, Representative Waters Evans, will speak for the committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S-298, an act relating to creating the Vermont Voting Rights Act.
Member from Charlotte.
Madam Speaker, S-298, which is currently called an act relating to creating the Vermont Voting Rights Act. Here's some foreshadowing, it won't be called that for long, was found favorable with amendment by your House Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee. It's an election year. It's essential to our democracy that elections are accessible, free, and fair, and that every Vermonter who can cast a vote is able to do so as easily and readily as possible. The federal government is reducing funding for election offices. And the U.S. Supreme Court just today issued a decision on a Voting Rights Act that is, it's important that we are dealing with this today. So S-298 puts several voting protection laws into state statute in order to preserve our current system and maintain continuity for state elections. This is essential. Starting with Section 1, this changes the way we will cite the act in the future. Instead of calling it the Voting Rights Act, it's more accurate to call it the Voter Protections Act of 2026, because we try very hard not to make significant changes to election laws in election years. This bill focuses on legislation that won't burden election officials or create confusion for voters during an already busy time. The name change makes sense because we're not changing anything regarding voting rights at this time. It would probably be wise to do so in the future, but right now we are going to save the Voting Rights Act changes for another year. Moving on to Section 2. As a state legislative body, We sometimes recreate federal laws within state statute. Part of this bill does exactly that. It puts already existing federal voting laws on a state level. This makes sense. If we already follow these laws and believe in their merits, it's a good idea to make sure they remain in statute should there be changes on a federal level. This section of the bill specifically focuses on prohibiting reckless or intentional intimidation, threatening, or coercion of both voters and election officials, and imposes a penalty of not more than 2 years in prison or $2,000. I do want to note here that the important language is reckless or intentional intimidation. Sometimes people ask, and it came up during testimony, that people say, well, maybe if you're campaigning or standing outside an election or, a voting place where people are voting with a campaign sign, or you're trying to convince people to vote for you, that's not the same as reckless or intentional intimidation. So that's an important thing to note in this section. This part, Section 2 also prohibits vote denial or dilution, which is the heart of the Federal Voting Rights Act. We want to make sure this is doubly secure in Vermont by adding it to state statute. It prohibits the imposition of measures to deny the right to vote to any citizen based on race or color, membership in a language minority group, or having a disability. It empowers the Attorney General to initiate a civil action in the Civil Division of the Superior Court if the rights of any voter or group of voters have been affected by such violation. Section 3 protects our personal data. Right now, anyone can access a voter checklist. This is allowed, and the Secretary of State's office requires the person obtaining those lists to sign an affidavit swearing or affirming that they won't use it for commercial or other illegal purposes. This portion of the bill gives town clerks the same direction, which makes the process clearer and easier for them, as well as making the process consistent on both state and municipal levels. So it's not changing who can access these voter checklists. It's not changing what they can access. It's just adding this layer for the town clerks, like a specific level and process for people, something for people to sign when they're obtaining these checklists. There was general support for that idea altogether. It's really just so important to make sure that these systems are just clear for everybody across the board. So sections 4 and 5 about candidate financial disclosure forms. When an elected official runs for office, they're required to fill out this form. Current statute says that the State Ethics Commission must create and maintain the form. This section of the bill clarifies that the Ethics Commission will make the form available on their website, provide resources like frequently asked question documents to assist people who are filling out the form, and to provide guidance and answer any other questions by email or phone. It also requires the Secretary of State's office website to include links to the form and any other related documents. A couple years ago, we added financial penalties for candidates who didn't file these forms on time. Because we're just now making it super clear who should create, host, and maintain these forms, we're delaying the implementation date of these consequences until a year from now, which is the end of May 2027. Those penalties are not being postponed indefinitely, and they're not being suspended permanently. They're just being delayed for a year. Section 6 involves campaign expenditures. The general idea in statute is that campaign funds can be used for expenses that are necessary for a candidate to campaign. A few years ago, we specified that campaign funds could be used for childcare expenses. If you do not want to take your children with you when you go campaigning, you can use those funds to pay for someone to mind them. In a similar vein, this section specifies that should a candidate use their campaign funds for security expenses, they can use them for monitoring systems, protective detail, which is also known as personal security, or cybersecurity. It's so important that we make sure that Vermont's elections and related processes are consistent, safe, secure, and allow Vermonters to comfortably exercise their right to vote and participate in local and state elections. This is essential to our democracy. and it's essential to solidify these protections now. This bill will take effect on passage. Your House Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee heard from many witnesses, the sponsor of the bill, the sponsor of a related bill, H541, which we passed in February out of the House, Legislative Counsel from the Office of Legislative Counsel, the Executive Director of the Vermont State Ethics Commission, the Commissioner from the Vermont State Ethics Commission, another Commissioner from the Vermont State Ethics Commission, a consultant for the Vermont State Ethics Commission, the Secretary of State, the Deputy Secretary of State, the Director of Elections and Campaign Finance from the Secretary of State's office, the Executive Director of the Vermont Republican Party, the Executive Director of the Vermont Democratic Party, the Executive Director of the Vermont Progressive Party, the Legislative Committee Chair from the Vermont Municipal Clerks and Treasurers Association, a former town clerk from Poultney, 3 members from Rev Up Vermont, an association of people with disabilities, the Director of the Civil Rights Unit from the Attorney General's office, the Assistant Attorney General and Chief of General Counsel and Administrative Law Division from the Attorney General's office, a Senior Policy Counsel from Fair Vote, a Senior Policy Specialist from Elections and Redistricting, the National Conference of State Legislatures, the Executive Director of the Vermont Public Interest Research Group, and a New Democracy Associate from the Vermont Public Interest Research Group. It's a lot of people. The committee voted 10-0-1 in favor of the bill as amended, and we respectfully ask for your support.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs? Are you ready for the question? Member from Lowell.
Madam Speaker, may I inquire the presenter of the bill, please?
Member from Charlotte is interrogated.
Madam Speaker, this is in regards to section 4 and 5. I've been hearing that there's quite an issue, quite a kerfuffle between the Secretary of State's office and the commission, where the Ethics Commission says that they don't have the staff to do what's required of them. And it appears that maybe there was some money put in initially by the House that was taken out by the Senate for one more FTE. I guess my question there, I see that you've resolved part of the problem with those disclosure forms not being available in section 5, but overall, how is this overall situation going to be resolved?
Madam Speaker, I cannot predict the future, so I do not know how the situation will be resolved. But in an ideal world, money would go back into the budget this year to fund those positions. House Government Operations and Military Affairs was put in a position to make a decision based on input from both the Secretary of State's office and the State Ethics Commission about what the best path forward was for this, while acknowledging that there are some financial constraints placed on the Ethics Commission. We did feel after taking extensive testimony that this was the best way to proceed.
Thank you, Member. Madam Speaker, again, I appreciate that there's a section in here now that won't allow members that don't file this disclosure form, won't require them to receive a penalty. But again, it doesn't appear to me that there's a resolution to this going forward, especially when I've got information that the commission is working on some pretty part-time employees and don't have, and it sounds like they haven't had. And so again, I'm just a little bit upset that either the Secretary of State or the commission hasn't resolved this to this point yet. Thank you.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have proposed to the Senate to amend the bill. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Up next is House Bill 902, which is an act relating to approval of amendments to the Charter of the City of Barrie. The bill was referred to the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs, which recommends that the bill ought to pass. The member from Dorset, Representative Pisnall, will speak for the committee. And then affecting the revenue of the state, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, which also recommends that the bill ought to pass. The member from Barrie City, Representative Waszak, will speak for that committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 902, an act relating to approval of amendments to the Charter of the City of Barrie.
Member from Dorset.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The current charter for the City of Barrie allows the City Council to retain 5% of any unexpended funds at the close of the fiscal year audit as an undesignated fund for future use. During the floods of 2023 and 24, the City of Barrie was hit hard. Fortunately for them, this fund balance carried them through with those unexpected urgent repairs while waiting for FEMA help. This charter change will help grow that fund. H 902, an act relating to approval of amendments to the Charter of the City of Barrie. There are two amendments recommended to the charter change. This bill proposes to approve amendments to the Charter of the City of Barrie to authorize the city manager or any councillor duly authorized by an action of the City Council to authorize the sale of city property. This proposal passed by the voters of the city with a favorable vote of 522 to 293 on May 13th, 2025. This bill also proposes to amend the City of Barrie Charter provisions related to the city's undesignated fund balance. This proposal passed by the voters with a favorable vote of 618 to 174. In Chapter 1, subsection 313, sale or lease of city property will now read, the City Council may authorize the sale or lease of any real or personal estate belonging to the city, and all conveyances, grants, or leases of such real estate shall be signed by the mayor, the city manager, or any councillor duly authorized by an action of the City Council. Subsection 601, payment of taxes. Section B, at the close of the fiscal year audit, any unexpended funds remaining from the city budget may be retained. If approved by vote of the City Council as an undesignated fund balance for future use, any funds retained pursuant to this provision shall be limited to an amount not greater than 10% of the city general fund budget expenses for the most recent voter-approved fiscal year. Any amount remaining in excess of such amount must be used in the subsequent budget to reduce the tax rate. Section 3, effective date. This act shall take effect upon passage. Madam Speaker, the Committee of Government Operations and Military Affairs heard testimony from the presenter of the bill, the City Manager of Barrie, and the Legal Counsel, Office of Legislative Counsel. Our committee approved the amendments with a vote of 11-0-0, and we respectfully request the body to support this charter change.
And now speaking for the Committee on Ways and Means, member from Barrie City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Your Committee on Ways and Means was referred H 902 and reports the bill as favorable. Our report can be found on page 2091 of today's calendar, and after review have found that H 902 will have no impact on the revenues of the state, and as such, there is no fiscal note. We heard from Legislative Counsel, Office of Legislative Counsel, and a senior fiscal analyst with the Joint Fiscal Office. Your Committee on Ways and Means found the bill favorable on a vote of 10-0-1, and we ask for the body's support.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Members, the final item on our action calendar today is Joint House Resolution 10, which is a joint resolution authorizing the 2026 Green Mountain Girls State Educational Program to use the State House. This resolution has been read and appears in yesterday's journal. Now the question is, shall the House adopt the resolution on its part? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have adopted the resolution. Members, that completes the orders of the day. Are there any announcements? Member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, because I am not the least bit shy or modest when it comes to discussing my famous relatives, many members are aware that Amelia Earhart was my grandmother's sister. My mother was the last member of the family who personally knew Amelia, and toward the end of my mom's long life, she wrote a biography of Amelia for middle graders, young adults, and above. And while it covers her record-breaking flights, it is centered on her lifelong activism and advocacy for women's rights and equality for women and girls. 2 weeks before my mother died, she signed a contract with a big global publisher, Bloomsbury, to publish the book. They brought it out last month in March in honor of Women's History Month. And I am delighted to say that the Friends of the Vermont State House and Bloomsbury and I have partnered for a fun fundraiser for the Friends of the Vermont State House. We will be at the Friends kiosk by the lunchroom tomorrow from 11 until 1. If you were to buy the book at a bookstore, it would cost you $28. The Friends are selling them for $20 each, and every penny of the $20 goes to the Friends of the Vermont State House, and we hope everyone will come see us. Thank you.
Are there any further announcements? Member from Williston.
Picking up on that theme a little bit, I just wanted to share again that the Women's Caucus will be hosting a screening this evening, 5 o'clock to 6:30 in room 11, the documentary film Gone Guys. And some might say, why is the Women's Caucus hosting a screening of a film called Gone Guys? And that is because the issues affecting boys and young men in our state, it's a Vermont-made film, have incredible impacts on people of all genders, and especially on girls and young women and moms. So we hope that folks will join us for the film screening and the panel discussion to follow. Room 11.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none. Member from Poultney, can you please offer us a motion to adjourn until Thursday, April 30th at 1 p.m.?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion this body stand in adjournment until Thursday, April 30th, 2026 at 1 p.m.
You have heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do